What's up, everybody? Today, I want to talk about resource management. I think it's one of the most crucial parts to designing a game that you want to have depth without having overcomplicated, ridiculous, impossible for anybody to get into without having to spend, 30 hours looking outside of the game, just studying wikis and stuff, right? I think you can do that if you want in your own time, or that's a different subject. This is just how do we simply add a lot of depth to a game. So what is resource management, right? And that differs game to game, but essentially it is how a user is spending their resources. But resources can be a lot of things. So for instance, let's take a look at StarCraft. StarCraft, you're going to have minerals, you're going to have gas, you're going to have upgrades, right? Or you're going to have time, I should say, and then you're using those to build things like structures, armies, workers, and upgrades. So it's pretty simple in that regard. But, of course, if you had unlimited of any of those, you would make the game become 1,000 times easier, right? If I had unlimited minerals and gas, all of a sudden, I no longer have to make a decision between, do I build this? Do I build this? Do I upgrade this right now? Or do I wait and spend that on army? Do I try and expand at this moment? Do I not, right? If I have unlimited of that resource, I just do it all. The only resource limiting me there is time, right? So having that limit on it, of course, is great because it creates all of these different timings in the game. It creates all of these different decisions that you are making in, StarCraft every single second, every single millisecond, pretty much. Like at any point in the game, whenever you discover new information, there is something that's changing in your mind where you're saying, I need to spend my resources here. I need to focus on this, right? If I expand and my opponent does not expand, there is now kind of a timer that gets set a little bit in the game where they need to figure out they now need to do some damage with the army that they've invested in instead. They need to do some sort of maybe double expand to like overdo it to gain some of that time back or some of those resources back, right? I'm investing in the long term and they're investing probably more in the short term. And so it creates all of these wonderful things. And in StarCraft, that is mainly timings that we see, right? You have the 1-1-1 build, the Immortal Sentry all in. You have, when you're hitting with those upgrades that just finished. And so you have that little window where you're stronger. Okay, great. Cool, Mr. Llama. This isn't an RTS, though. We're talking about an RPG, right? ARPG. And with that, I want to say, yeah, let's look a little bit more at the RPG aspects of things. So first, I want to talk through, obviously being a big Diablo 2 fan, I want to talk through just resources that exist in Diablo 2. I'm not saying whether these resources are good or bad yet. We're just listing out resources that do exist. 1, health. 2, mana and the potions that are attached with these. 3, stamina. 4, inventory space. TP scrolls and ID scrolls. Faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, IAS, skill usage / action usage. Kind of, that's a whole like category in itself. Stash space. Short spell cooldowns. Stats from items worn. We're talking like magic find and things like that. Stat points, skill points, respecs, and then like the number of summons, traps that you have. And then you could also have like mercenaries could be a resource on their own, right? So obviously these resources mean different things and it depends on how you're playing, but each of them have important roles in the game. And I want to kind of go into the depth that having these decisions and having these resources kind of brings and how I can see using these to improve Diablo 4 or some sort of future game. So just like in StarCraft, health is a resource. That's not one we talked about in StarCraft, but unit health is a resource. If I have a stalker that does 20 damage, let's say, if it's at max life, it does 20 damage. Guess how much damage it does at 1 life? 20 damage. So utilizing the life on all of my stalkers in a battle, if I pull every stalker back at 1 life in a battle and keep it alive and you don't, I'm going to win the fight in an equal ground. That's a resource, right? Just like we have that there, in Diablo 2, we also have health as a resource. I'm not using a health potion every time I lose 1 HP. Instead, I'm watching it carefully. I'm monitoring my health going up and down, or just going down, maybe going up if I'm life on attack, life steal, whatever. And then I'm carefully potting when necessary. Why? Because potions are a resource, right? If I want to maximize my potions, I'm going to optimize my health usage and the health resource usage. And this is why I don't like having a cooldown on your health potion, because it's making me consider the time to use it, but then it's not allowing me to really have like a resource management on it, right? I like it when I can go in and spam 7 rejuvenation, which are instant gain potions in Diablo 2, in 3 seconds. But, you know, because it's in some crazy encounter. I jump in, there's a bunch of crazy mod, curse and everything, and they're like whacking me from all over, and my health is just dropping down, and I'm like using my potions. 3 seconds later, I've used 7 rejuvenation potions and got out into safety. I'm down 7 rejuves now, right? So there's like a big drop in that resource. I need to find more, or I'll have to craft more or do something to get those back. But then additionally, it allowed me to take on that situation, right? It allowed me to look at that scenario and go, yeah, I could jump in there and, you know, maybe kind of risk it, instead of, well, I just have 1 emergency potion, so I can only do that 1 time. Oh, it's on cooldown. Now I have to back out and like wait 13 seconds or whatever potion cooldown is until I can like engage again with this sort of style, right? So having that gives me reason. It gives me the ability to manage my resources and manage my health potions and my health in general. And then the more times I do that, the more times I'm going to have to go back and farm more rejuve potions, or go back to town and get more health and whatever it is. So there's a time that I'm committing to this and having to make a decision on. Taking away this option, in my experience, doesn't make it easier. It just makes it simpler and less strategic, right? Continuing in the same vein, but on the other side, which Diablo 2 has mana, having mana as a limiting factor is another great way that you can improve resource management. Let me give a great example. I think this is one of my like favorite examples that I've come up with, because it's dumb, but it's fantastic. In Diablo 2 speedrunning, the barbarian uses double swing through normal difficulty, right? He gets 2 weapons and he double swings with them. We use flails, which are mace mastery, or mace weapons, and then there's a mace mastery skill that can give you a bonus to the damage and attack rating of that. Now, both of those are going to give you a bonus. However, mace mastery is going to give you a larger bonus than double swing. So if you put 1 point in double swing, you have your double swing. Any extra points are going to increase your damage there, but you're going to get more from mace mastery, right? So it makes sense that you would put 1 point in double swing, every subsequent point in mace mastery to deal with the most damage. So why do you see us adding points into double swing? And this is because double swing has a mana cost associated with it. And I actually want to make sure I get it right at every levels here. So let's look really fast. At level 1, every time, and it has an attack bonus. Yeah, of 15, 20. So it goes up 5% every time. Every time that you use double swing, you start at 2 mana and you go down 0.25 mana. So it costs 2 mana per swing at level 1. By level 5, it's 1 mana per swing. And by level 9, it's 0 mana per swing. Meaning it is free. You need 0 mana at all to use it. Right? So what does this create? With a very simple difference and change, and just this small mana reduction piece in there, it creates a large number of varied resource management strategies that we can have. The more I put into double swing, the more damage I give up, but the less need I have for mana potions, eventually going to not needing mana potions. This means that's less trips to town to refill my mana potions, which also means this is more health potions that I can store, because inventory is also a resource management, right? It's something that in Diablo 2, potions take up 1 slot per potion. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm saying that's how it is. And so that's more health potions that I can have, more survivability, and potentially a faster speedrun time. So what do we see right now? We see us putting multiple points into double swing, and we're constantly playing around with, okay, well, maybe I'll put some points into the double swing because I feel like I'm able to sustain here with the amount of mana potions that I get from monster drops, where I don't have to go to town extra to refill, but I can still gain more damage, right? That is a very small, tiny detail that in the grand scheme is not important. It's not something that ruins anyone's experience. Any casual player playing the game is going to be like, man, I just can't ever decide if I need to put this into Mace Mastery or double swing. And it's just, they'll probably just be like, screw it, I'm just going to go double swing and get 0 mana and it's great. I don't have to worry about it at all. Or they'll be like, hey, Mace Mastery does damage, cool, and I'll just go back to town and get my mana potions, right? It's not a large strategic decision that needs to be made that will change and alter the way you play the game, but it's something that allows for a ton of depth and a ton of optimization and a ton of varied strategies that we still don't even have a fully set solution on, because a lot of times it comes down to your personal preference or what you found in the game. Oh, hey, I have mana per kill on my helm, and so that I find a little more sustained from, so I'm going to put a couple less points into it, right? It allows for so much more detail while still allowing other people to enjoy the game. And I don't even know if every class in Diablo 4 really needs mana, right? I kind of like the idea of having Fury or having Spirit or having that different thing, because let's be real here. That's like a small case that mana actually kind of matters a ton, right? A lot of times, like a barbarian with mana, it's like, why? It just, I almost like the idea of having something else in that slot, but having some sort of modifiers for it that you can manage, that's something that makes you consider how you're picking up talents, how you're filling up your inventory space, whatever it is, I think is very important, because I think you still want to give options to people and strategic depth through decisions when it comes to that, whatever resource you want to call it, you want to give to that character. Moving forward, we have stamina in the game of Diablo 2. I think stamina is actually not a great resource and should probably just get nullified pretty quickly, or just removed, because it does get nullified pretty quickly in Diablo 2, right? In the early game, you have your stamina potions, and there is a balancing act of like, am I carrying stamina potions here? Am I not? Am I doing run walk? It's the potential to slow yourself down, but once again, you're filling your inventory up. It's resource management. It's great. But it's also like annoying. It gets tiring pretty quickly, and then you just you're over it pretty quickly, basically. I don't think you need stamina at all. I think instead having some sort of, you could look like Dark Souls, where like things cost stamina, but it's all across, right? It's all this shared resource. Attack, roll, block, whatever it is, that all takes your stamina, and you have to decide how you're going to be using that. I think that works there. In Diablo 4, I don't think I would have stamina. I would probably just remove it. Not really needed here. Inventory space is a great one, because it really makes you sit down and think, do I want this 9 to life Grand Charm, or do I want 3 more spots for health potions? I need gold. Should I pick up this 8-slotted scythe, or should I pick up smaller things, something that's 3 slots and then a ring and an amulet, right? I'm assigning values to these things in my mind. It's not complicated math. It's simple math of me just going, this scythe takes up 8 spots. That's a lot. I don't really want to have that taking 8 slots. Now I throw it on the ground. That's a small decision that I make. It's not affecting my overall gameplay a ton, but it's a small time where I'm making a decision and I'm caring about the item itself and the item style and the item sizing a little bit more. in Diablo 2, every inventory slot is critical, and different objects having different shapes suddenly makes you really having to just think about it a little bit more, because you're giving up charm space, or you're giving up space to carry potions, or you're giving up space to pick up another item that could be worth a lot. It's not complicated, but it's another little mini challenge that exists in the game that you're making a decision on. Now, it also gives you a fun little mini game of playing Tetris every now and then. Some people don't want to play Tetris, some people do. That's totally fine. I think it's fun to mix around, and obviously as a speedrunner, I think it's really fun to pick and choose things and put them in as needed. But the issue is that if everything is just one slot, you don't really you don't have to care as much. There's still inventory management in Diablo 3 in a game where there's one per slot, but it's less of looking at items as different, right? You're not having these different values to assign. It just makes it simpler. Some people like that. That's totally fine. I don't think I speak for everybody when I say I like having different sizes on these objects. But I think in the terms of inventory space management and resource management from it, I do think it adds some cool hidden value to the game. Now, the issue that Diablo 2 does have is that eventually charms win out. The value gained from having a charm, it became too good of a resource, and so it eventually wins out, and your entire inventory becomes a charm inventory, right? You might have a tiny little space. A lot of us use a cube as our space, so you have your just 4 slots for the cube, and any item you want to look at goes in the cube, because you're giving, you can always say, I could have that open space, but I could also have a charm that gives me 20 to life, right? And just by doing that sort of stuff, you are, that resource became too strong. And so that's why if I were to make Diablo 4, I would probably have something that goes along the lines of having a separate inventory bag for charms. And maybe that bag doesn't even come into existence until you make it to the end of the game. So that way you have this, management, because I love when I'm playing through the game at first, a lot of charms aren't amazing, and so I'm actually deciding, and I'm selling some, throwing some on the ground. But as the game goes on, eventually I start finding good enough charms that it's never worth the space. So I would probably do something eventually you get yourself a pouch or a bracelet, right? A charm bracelet, and you can put X number of charms on it, or have a little, inventory for it, and you can fill that. And then you're making the decisions of which charms are there. Do I want grand charms, large charms, small charms? How do I want to, position those in there? You get to play that little resource management game. TPID scrolls, I don't think it's super important to have them, but having these scrolls is a small little thing that can help you stay focused, right? And once again, I go back to speedrunning, because that's what I do mostly. When I'm speedrunning, I'm often leaving a town portal behind me, right? I drop it, I run forward to the next waypoint, and I do stuff like that, so I can always go back to it, sort of stuff. If I run out of town portals, then I'm kind of stuck in dead water. I have to figure something out. I have to go find another one, or it creates fun situations for me. You could call them frustrating situations. I think they're fun situations because it's oh dang, I forgot to manage my town portal resource. I think in Diablo 4 you could get rid of this idea. I think it's one that isn't super necessary, super complicated, but it's something. And same with am I going to carry a scroll of town, of ID scrolls? Or am I just going to save those 2 inventory spots for charms or potions or whatever, and then I'll ID it at Kane when I get back home? It's a small decision to make. Once again, the more little decisions like this that exist, the better I think a game can be. The next one I want to talk about is very important in my mind, and this is action usage. So what I mean by action usage is skill usage, FCR, FHR, IAS, all of these things that are actions moving, whatever it is, right? So this might be just my favorite resource management because it's what am I choosing to use my actions on. And this is something you see in every game, right? And it's in some games there's no limit at all, such as like StarCraft. Pretty much there is very little limits, right? People, players have like 300 APM, actions per minute, and they are constantly utilizing all the resources and all the health and all the time because there's too many things to do in the game, so you can't do it all at once, so you have to pick and choose. The faster you are, the more you can do, the better it is. In Diablo, you don't quite get up to that point, but there's still something similar, and there's still a lot of stuff that, when you're dedicating yourself to one action, another action isn't going to be taken. So let's take a look at some examples and some more reasoning on this. I'm spending my time casting skill X, moving to position Y, attacking with skill Z, right? So here's an example with like my sorceress in Act 4, and she's gonna go into the Chaos Sanctuary, and she uses like Nova and stuff, right? Let's pretend that we're using this case scenario. So she goes to the River of Flame waypoint. I use the action for that. I use the action to weapon swap. I cast Battle Orders, Battle Command, using her CTA, which is just a weapon that gives me survivability with those skills. And then I cast my Frozen Armor skill, right? Gives me a little buff for survivability. I weapon swap back to my main hand, and now I've got my buffs on. I then teleport into the Chaos Sanctuary. Let's say it takes 10 teleports to get there. And then when I spot a group of monsters, I teleport over to that group of monsters. And before they can react, because monsters have a hit recovery as well, right? And I have a cast rate, my speed at which I am casting my spells, and breakpoints for this. I jump over to them, and I've stacked up faster cast rate gear so that I've hit a good breakpoint so I can drop a Nova really quick on them. So I jump on them, and before they react, I start to Nova. I Nova on them, putting them into hit recovery, preventing some of them from getting their hits off. Maybe one of them has high light res and he's in the back, so he starts walking towards me because it's not enough damage to put him in hit recovery. But the other ones are in hit recovery. However, outside of the range of my Nova, there's some archers, and they're firing arrows at me. And these arrows hit me and now put me into hit recovery. So I'm spending my action recovering. And then now I need to decide, am I going to move? Am I going to sit here and continue to try and Nova the group that I'm at? I have to make this decision. So I move away, I teleport next to the archer group, and I cast a Frost Nova, which is going to slow them down, slows down their attack speed, and telegraphs their arrows for me easier so I can dodge them. Then I start to use my static skill, which removes their HP at a percentage of HP removal. Whether you think that's OP or not, that's a separate story. But I use my static skill. Once they get down to a certain amount of health, I start casting Nova again on them. They have high light res, so they're not getting put in hit recovery. And as I see them about to finish shooting their arrows, I dodge out of the way just with a move. And then I go back in and use a couple more Novas. Of course, during this whole time, I've been using mana potions and health potions, and I've been having to deal with, I ran out of mana in the middle of some of those Novas, so I moved a little bit as my mana regened before I went to that. Or maybe I used a rejuve potion because it was really important, and so I wanted to be able to continue to Nova. Once again, more resource management. At this point, I put on my telekinesis skill, and I telekinesis a couple potions, so they go back into my belt just from that. And then I move away from a trailing melee monster that was coming at me. I refresh my frozen armor, and then I teleport away, and I'm good to go. So let's kind of recap here. I cast Battle Orders, Battle Command, Frozen Armor, Teleport times 10, Nova times 4, none as I'm put into hit recovery. I move, I teleport times 1, I Frost Nova times 1, I static times 7, I move, I use Nova times 3, I telekinesis times 2, I move, I cast Frozen Armor, and then I teleport away. Now what happens when you put cooldowns on these spells? What happens when you remove faster cast rate and faster hit recovery breakpoints, or hit recovery entirely? Instead of this fight going a billion ways, it maybe goes 1,000 ways, right? I don't get all of these great options for all of these things because I jump in, I cast Frost Nova. Well, that's on cooldown. Okay, I cast Static. Okay, well, that's on cooldown. I cast Nova. All right, well, now that's on cooldown. I run for a little bit. My Frost Nova's back up. I cast that. I run. My Nova's up. I cast that. Right? Like, if you have all these cooldowns, limiting your CC skills, limiting your damage skills, whatever it is, you're just on a cooldown like pattern, right? You optimize your cooldown pattern, and you could say that that's a resource and a resource management that you're kind of doing, but it's a limiting one. It's one that doesn't say, hey, Mr. Llama, we trust for you to make the right decision at the right time with skills. It says, hey, Mr. Llama, you don't get to make the right decision at the right time other than the one time. You jump in and cast your Frost Nova on them or whatever CC or whatever it is that you want to freeze them. But then, like, that's it. You don't get to cast that again. And to me, that is a brutal way to call me dumb, maybe, to just limit me and say, instead of getting to create this really inventive, optimized way of dealing with these groups of monsters, you go in and you just kind of hit them all. And there's obviously, you aren't just going in and always just spamming all your abilities immediately, right? I know that you do some stuff for, oh, there's that pack of monsters over there, so I'll put my black hole right there to kind of deal more with that, and I'll CC these archers and freeze them so they're not hitting me, right? There is some stuff to be done with it, but the point is, you just run out, in my opinion, really quickly, and you don't get the option to make that decision between, am I doing damage? Am I trying to slow them? What kind of damage am I doing? This monster has high light res. This monster has high cold res. This monster has high fire res. This monster is immune in Diablo 2, right? I don't know if immunes need to exist, but all of these things and really like making decisions as you're bouncing between each group, even down to the point of hit recovery, right? That's like so huge. I love hit recovery, and I'm sad when games remove it or castrate, because it makes you have to think, can I get a spell off in this time, or who's going to kind of win the early, that like stare down, right? I jump in, I'm going to cast my spell. I have a cast rate. They're going to wind up their shot. They have an attack speed. Who's going to hit first? Because if you can get the other person to hit recovery, you can get them stunned. You can have that advantage. It rewards you for being fast, for being, aggressive, but it also is high risk, because if you jump into a high risk situation and they get on top of you, they get that first hit off. Now you're in a tough spot. So I really, 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 this is one of the biggest reasons of why I don't like cooldowns on skills. I just feel like in an ARPG, in a PvE, in that example that I just gave, no skill should be so OP that it's just always the one use all the time, whatever it is, right? That's where you have to balance the skills, essentially, a little bit. Because even when I have really strong skills, like my Blizzard source, or if you have a Frozen Orb source, you have whatever it is, there's still plenty of times where you're not using that. And a way that they use for balancing, once again, I don't think this is the way that should be used in Diablo 4, but a way they use for balancing is immunities. Cool, you do a ton of cold damage. This guy's immune to cold. You literally cannot kill him with cold damage. So, do you want to use some other skills that you've kind of put some stuff into? Oh, I'll be Fireball Meteor, I guess, as well. Do you want to have a Mercenary? Do you want to go in and static and then like CC him with telekinesis to kind of stun him while your Mercenary's hitting him? Or is your Mercenary strong enough to just deal with him? Do you want to play with another party person who can help, who has a different light spec to deal with that, right? Like, you have a lot of different spells and you utilize a lot of them. And it's so much more fun, in my opinion, when I can decide, do I want to Nova 4 times here and move and Tele and Static 3 and Frost, or do I want to Frost first and then Static and then Nova, because these guys are going to be faster and more aggressive at me, and so I need to slow them down first, and whatever it is, right? Now, I think when you go towards something like PvP, obviously, in my opinion, it still works in Diablo 2. You can have PvP while having multiple skills, so it's not end of the world. But I do think cooldowns can actually be interesting in PvP, and so that's something that like you see in Dota 2. It gives you that way to counter each other. Oh, he used his stun skill and it didn't hit. I know I have 12 seconds before he can stun me again, so I can play more aggressive in this way. That's interesting, but I hate it in PvE. I think it works in PvP. I hate it in PvE, and I think PvP can also exist without cooldowns on spells, because you can still go in and have to make the decision of, am I going to CC right now? Am I going to try and do this kind of damage? Do I want to try for an AoE damage, or do I want to target on this guy, right? There's a lot of different stuff like that. The next point I want to talk about is stash space. So I don't actually think Diablo 4 should run a limited stash, but I still want to discuss it because it is a resource that's limited in Diablo 2. And it does create the same problem that having a limited inventory in a game can create. And I put problem down because I actually enjoy it sometimes. So let's say you found a pair of amazing gloves and amazing boots, and you want to keep both of them. But you go to your stash, and it's already filled up with some gems and some runes and some armors, and I don't have enough space for all of this. Well, now I have to once again make a decision. What is this glove or this boot worth to me? Is it better to throw out that armor so I can put these gloves and these boots in here? And once again, this is also where you get sizes of items having meaning, because you're not just, one for one. You're saying, I can toss out a scythe, and that's 8 slots, and I can fit a boot and a glove. Yeah, I think that that's worth it. So you get to have this really cool decision to be made. And then it allows you to learn, and when you learn, you feel proud, and I think that sort of pride, learning, is what people love about games, right? It's fun to be challenged, and then it's fun to learn and gain knowledge and go, it would be better in the future if I did XYZ. Right? Oh, dang, I got rid of that fire resist glove, and that ended up being a bad idea because I ran into some fire monsters later. It didn't kill my game, but it made it a little harder, and I think, I should have kept those fire resist gloves there. Maybe I'll look for that again in the future. Now I know for the future, my next character, I know I want to maybe have something that can deal with that. Right? The problem is with this is that games that have awesome loot dropping and characters getting stronger as the game go on, you eventually or very quickly fill your stash with amazing items, and especially once things start to really have value, then you need a place to store it. And the solution in Diablo 2 was creating level 1 characters and just putting all of your gear on those guys, and you would just, I had tens of accounts filled with characters that just had gear on them, because it was worth something, and I love trading, but, you had to do something with it. So, in my opinion, maybe it's something that can just be unlocked, right? And then you unlock some sort of shared stash. You get a character, you beat through the game, that way you get to enjoy the resource management of it, and then you get to the end of the game, or the end of the campaign, whatever it is, and you unlock a large shared stash between all your characters so that you can share it among your account. I think having a shared stash is a great way to go. I don't know if this is a resource that needs to be limited. I just wanted to say it is one that does exist. Beyond that, let's talk now about another resource, stats from items worn. This might be my second favorite resource to manage. Now, I'm not just talking about your basic stats. I'm looking at those things plus all the affixes, right? I guess affixes would have been the more appropriate title on this. Half freeze duration, or cannot be frozen, plus to resistances, magic find, gold find, light radius, faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, etc., right? Why are these stats so great? It's because there's no way to honestly quantify them. Is 15% more magic find, tell me right now, is 15% more magic find better than 10 faster cast rate, or better than cannot be frozen, or better than 10 to all resistances? If you can tell me which one of those is the best thing without having my gear context, my character context, my goals context, or even just my preferences, you can't. You physically cannot say any one of those is better than any other of those without having the full context of things. And even then, you still cannot, because it comes down to, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a gold find character? Do you want to be a magic find character? Do you want to be a boss killer? Do you want to be, do you want to be more survivable? Are you really good where you don't worry about having max res all the time? Or you're willing to have a lower life title, but, and willing to risk it so that you can be more aggressive and be, have more of this? Are you playing a summoner? You cannot answer that question at all. And these stats are the best stats. These affixes are the best affixes because so much of the time it just comes down to, what do you want to do? There's not a right answer all the time. You can optimize based on how good you are at the game, or if you want to be really strategic in different ways. But overall, it's just your personal preference. So there's not a lot of strategy required, but there's a lot of strategy allowed, right? I could give you a million examples of times where I have to make the decision between putting on gear with higher magic find, higher life, higher damage, or higher resistances. And plenty of other stats and affixes as well. It's always a really fun balancing act, and I think the more that you simplify items and remove these kinds of decisions, the more boring that an item becomes. And in a game that is about loot, right? The purpose of Diablo is finding loot. That's not everybody's purpose playing the game, but that is the main purpose of the game. In a game that has that purpose, the more boring an item becomes, the faster that I will grow tired of it. If I want to put 20,000 hours into a game, I need exciting loot. In Diablo 2, I have found so many items. I have one character that's dedicated to finding every unique and set item in the game, and she has one unique item still to find, and that's it. And yet I still get excited for loot every single day, and I still make decisions that can change what I want to use to farm different areas. Oh, they've got, immunes or high res stuff over there. They've got, this is an easier area, so I can stack up my magic find higher. This is a dangerous area. I need to make sure that I'm buffing my character up. I don't want to die, right? Like, I'm still making decisions and changing my gear out for areas, for monster types, for whatever. And loot is still exciting to find because there's still upgrades that I can find, especially when we look at like really cool rare items or some magic items that I could even find. So there's plenty to be talked on itemization, but that is one thing that I think is super important is don't just look at items as more attack, more defense. Make it simple so I can just put it on and off. Make me make a decision. Don't always make things go up and down. Make a lot of stuff go sideways. I think that's the best way to put it. A is not better than B is not better than C. They are equal across. Which path do you want to take? And let me choose that path. Moving more towards attributes and stats themselves, giving a character a limited number of stat points and then creating different reasons to use them is another great way to add minor customizations and optimizations for a character. So for a casual player, they shouldn't be so demanding that if you're not optimally placing them, it ruins your game. Oh no, I've bricked my character completely because I didn't put my stats in perfectly. But for a strategic player, having the ability to min-max and study and optimize stats is a great little mini game that they can play that can add a ton of depth. So like in Grim Dawn, you have physique, cunning, and spirit. And spirit is one that's usually just have enough for your gear. Cunning is for offense. Physique is for life and defense. Physique tends to be the one to max, but there's plenty of builds that utilize putting a lot into cunning, right? So you definitely have kind of a mix and match, and people play around with that. In Diablo 2, you have strength, dexterity, vitality, and energy. The general consensus is enough strength and dexterity for gear, nothing in energy, and the rest in vitality. An energy shield sorceress bucks this trend, as well as a character looking for max block would then be putting into dexterity. But beyond that, you're mostly just focusing on one stat as your dump, which tends to be vitality in Diablo 2. Do I think this system is perfect? I do not. Do I think this system works well, even though the main goal is just to dump into vitality? I do. How come? Because a dead stat has worth. A dead stat like strength or spirit has worth by just being a stat itself. Is it worth one missing vitality point is what it then becomes. So, the user, or this gives the user the opportunity to add a bunch of strategy and depth to their item choices by adding in a stat like strength or spirit. So let's take a look at Diablo 2, right? Here's an example. That armor has plus 20 to strength on it. Do I have 20 hard strength points that I'm putting in? Yes. Okay, well then that's worth 20 vitality to me. It's not as great of vitality because if I take that armor off, I've now lost that 20 to strength and I would need to find it elsewhere. But it's worth 20 vitality that I can take out of having to hard put into strength and I can put in vitality. So I need to consider the permanence of the piece that I would be putting in there, how I would maybe be able to get it in other ways if necessary, just different variables like that. But let's say it's pretty permanent. So it would be, replacing, let's say, an armor that gives me plus 60 to life. Well, what's really interesting or fun about Diablo 2 is vitality actually differs per character. So 20 vitality in Diablo 2 for Barbarian, he gets 4 life per vitality point. So that's 80 life. An Amazon Assassin Paladin would be 60 life. A Druid, Necro, and Source, that's only 20 life, or 40 life, because it's plus 2 per vitality for them. So on a Barbarian, you're gaining life. On the other 3, you're breaking even, but now having a little bit less flexibility with it, right? Because now you're stuck with that piece of gear a little bit more. And on a Necro, Source, and Druid, you're actually losing life by putting this on. It's a small little thing. That's not complicated math for me to do, 20 times 4. But it's something that makes me sit down and really consider, is this piece of gear good for me? And it just adds a few seconds. I'm not spending hours debating if this is the right thing or not. A few seconds. If I'm really trying to optimize, maybe a few minutes. And then I can make the decision, yeah, I think it is. Or no, I don't think it is. Beyond that, you also have cool benefits in Diablo 2, such as more vitality is more of a chance that your potions will crit. A lot of people don't know this, but your potions will actually crit in the game. So the higher your vitality, the better chance that your potion will double your regen. That's kind of cool. Maybe I want to have a higher crit chance of my potions. That also exists with energy, by the way. The higher my energy, the more chance that I'm going to get a crit on a mana potion. And we actually use that sometimes in speedrunning, which is really interesting, right? So it's just this, once again, it's kind of small, but it's not small at all. It's not ruining anybody's game to put into strength, to put into vitality, to put into all of this stuff, but it's giving you a lot. And then on the other side of that, you'll also have stuff like, if I have strength, what can I wear with that? This armor takes 110 strength to wear. All of my other gear caps out at 80. So if I want to put 30 more strength into my character, I'm sacrificing 30 points in vitality, which is anywhere from 60 to 120 life, depending on which, character I'm using. Now you have more of a decision if you want to work your strength up to wear that item piece. It's nothing that's limited that says you can't use a maul as a sorceress, but do I want to have that 200 plus strength in my character to use the maul for, right? Like, how am I going to get there on a barbarian, whatever it is? It becomes this game that you play and you can once again optimize, but isn't ruining anyone else's experience. Jumping over into skill points, there will be a lot said on skill points in the future. We've already talked about skill points kind of in their cooldown usage. Here I want to discuss the resource management portion of having skill points themselves, right? And having a skill tree that you're choosing. Having to manage my character and make decisions in a skill tree as I move through the game gives me identity and meaning to the experience of leveling up in this game and playing through this game. So think of it like exploring a game where you're faced with a decision that says, do you want to save this person or do you want to kill this person? What does this do with the game? What does it give us? It gives us purpose and excitement and knowledge that whatever decision I make now will affect the future. And that's really cool. And it makes me think for a second, like, oh man, do I want to be evil? Do I want to be really good? Do I want to go back and forth? Do I think it, what do I think it will do by choosing this? It gives me that experience. It could forever change how my character is viewed, and how the story progresses in the game. Maybe this time I'll play through the game as evil, and next time I'll play through as good. And then I'll play a character that goes back and forth, and I want to see the different characters and how they react and how they go through the game. Right? It allows for me to have regrets. Oh man, I shouldn't have killed that guy. But the regrets are good because they spark a desire in me to play the game again. Now, this is what I think a proper skill tree can do, in my opinion. It lets you choose your path with meaning and purpose, and it can fill you with a desire to try something new when you see something in the future of the game. You see that your build's not working as much as you like. You see that person come in with that Nova Sorceress, right? I can use a PvP example. I was out PvPing in Diablo 2 one day, and this guy came flying in with a 200 faster cast rate, which is the max breakpoint sorceress, jumped on top of me, put me into hit recovery with a bunch of like really quick novas, killed me, and teleported away. And I just sat there like, that was awesome. You know what I did? I logged out immediately. And then I went logged out of that character, created a sorceress, and I built a Nova Sorceress. And it was so cool. It was so much fun. All because I watched one person do it. So you get to do that. You get to watch that stuff and think about that stuff and get excited for a decision that, and then that whole time I had a purpose. I had a goal that I was working towards. Instead of just going, all right, well, I'm just going to go to my stash and I'll just become a Nova Sorceress in 5 seconds. To me, it's like when you give me everything in the end, anyways, when I can have every skill, you're taking away my identity, but not just throughout the whole game, because I no longer need to care about balancing. Yeah, it's not just at the end, but it's through the whole game, I meant to say, right? I no longer have to care about how I balance my character, how I balance those resources, how I spend them. It's like saying, hey, make sure you save money for college and be careful what you spend it on. Also, here's a check for your full tuition that you can cash when you finish college. Okay, well, now I don't really care what I spend my money or save it on, right? Because I'm going to get my college paid for at the end anyways, right? Just get okay, so I don't care, right? Like, I lose all the purpose of it, right? I'm getting it all in the end, so who cares? Take it away, and now there's actions and meanings and purpose, and I can have pride in the decisions that I made. Yeah, man, I went ahead and went into this really cool, like, BlizzSource build, and it was awesome, and the way that I got there was super cool, and I'm, like, super happy with that. Like, that's fun to look back on and have that. And this is why in Diablo 4, I think we need to go back and really look at kind of locking you into skills, not permanently, but locking you into skills and making you choose and sacrifice other skills so that you're building a character identity, you're building a personality, you're building these really fun, funky, whatever characters. And some of them are going to be really serious, some of them are going to be really goofy, but like they have a purpose and a personality on their own. And I actually do believe in respecs. But I think they need to hurt a little bit. So let's move into respecs. So in Diablo 2, you have respecs. You get 3 free respecs. Well, you have to do a quest, Den of Evil quest, to get a respec, 1 per difficulty. And then you have the ability to do future respecs if you kill the Diablo, Baal, Mephisto, and Duriel or Indariel. And they drop essences. So not all the time. So you have to like collect essences by killing all the bosses, put them in your cube, morph them together. You can get a token that you can use to reset and respec your character. So it's nothing that is always just immediate. You have free all the time. It's another resource that you have to kind of think about. Like, do I want to respec this character? Do I want to use my free one right now? Or do I want to like wait on it? You know, and we use that in speedrunning all the time. But even endgame, there's plenty of times where you sit there and you're like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm going to go ahead and make this change in my character. So one idea that I read that I thought was really interesting was allowing a character to respec, but having it cost a level of experience each time they do it. So, you know, you could make it lore about you have to give up part of your soul to perform the spell to reach, you know, whatever, right? I'm not a lore guy, but something like that. But it adds some like pain to the process. It makes it so you're not just changing whenever you want. Oh, I go to my loadout, change a couple gear around. Cool. We're now a different character, right? Instead, it makes you have some focus and it makes you think, do I want to constantly be like changing between all these things, or do I want to have like my different characters for it, right? I love looking at my account and going, that's my Inferno Sorceress. And guess what her name is? It's Burn Llama Burn or something, right? Like, she has a whole personality. It's great. Rather than, that's my generic max level sorceress that has any skills and she can change into whatever she wants with a quick loadout. It loses all of its identity. It loses all of its purpose. And you just have generic max level character. That's for me what it kind of turns into, and where I really dislike the you get every skill whenever you want or just on loadout style, because you just, no decisions getting there then matter anymore. And even then at the end, the character doesn't have a ton of purpose. Why do I build another sorceress when I have my max level one that easy? So I just do that. So I don't know. For me, I like being able to have identity within it, or have a cost if I do want to respec it. Make it hurt a little, you know? One of the last things to talk about is number of summons and traps. Number of summons I think is pretty obvious, but number of traps I think is one that's more interesting to talk about. So in Diablo 2, the assassin has trap skills, and she has multiple trap skills, and she can lay these on the ground, and they will shoot shots, basically, at monsters. But there's a maximum of 5 traps that can be laid at a time. So let's take a look at the lightning traps, because those are the exciting ones. The 2 used are Lightning Sentry and Death Sentry. Now, both of these will shoot lightning in a straight line, which makes positioning of them important. I need to think, where am I laying these? I can't just keep laying them as many as I want in every direction, right? Because they'll be breaking each other apart, as if I lay more than 5. So I need to think, where am I putting them? But additionally, I need to consider which ones am I dropping. Lightning Sentry does more lightning damage. Death Sentry still does lightning damage, but also has a skill called Corpse Explode, which brings into another resource, corpses on the ground. So now I have this whole great resource management of where are my traps, how am I laying them down, what position am I putting them in, what bodies do I have on the ground, how am I gathering up monsters to bring them near bodies potentially to corpse explode them, right? There's this whole like meta game built into it and strategy that I can use to optimize, where I can fight through monsters a little bit faster by being smarter about how I'm putting down lightning and sentry traps. However, if you're a casual player and you don't want to care about that at all, you don't have to. You just throw down your traps and you let them attack stuff, and they'll kill the stuff eventually, and you move a little bit slower through the game, but you move through the game. Right? And then the last thing I want to talk about is Mercenaries. So Diablo 2 gives you one mercenary that you can use, and you have to make the decision of what kind of mercenary do you want. Now, unfortunately, the Act 2 mercenaries become pretty dominant, and so most other mercenaries don't exist really as great choices in the end. but you still can pick them up. They still can be fun things to play with and still can be fun to gear. So it's not end all be all. It's just the optimize usually goes towards an Act 2, sometimes an Act 5 if you want to mess around with a barbarian. But you still have decisions even between your Act 2 mercenaries because they have different auras. Do I want a defensive-based mercenary? Do I want an offensive-based mercenary? Do I want, to have defiance to increase my defense to make it so it's harder for people to hit me? Do I want to have holy freeze so that it slows the monsters that are around me? Do I want to have might aura so that he gets a boost to his melee damage and I get a boost to my melee damage, right? Like, there are options, there are resources here, and you have to think and decide and build for that mercenary specifically. It's not generic weapons and everything across all of them. So you're building for whatever it is specifically. And once again, it's more character, it's more identity given to it. So for instance, I have a Blizzard source, and I like to have my Blizzard source use a mercenary that uses Might Aura because I want it to have higher attack. I don't care about the cold around it because I do cold damage. So it's kind of repetitive to me. If I had a different, kind of sorceress, I might want it to have that Holy Freeze aura. But it's identity, it's what you want to build. So this has probably been a long enough talk on resource management. We probably went into depth on certain things, a bit more than necessary, but to me, it's one of the most important things to consider in an ARPG. Managing those resources gives me purpose. It gives my actions reason, and it allows for so much depth to just be added to the game without having to create a complicated system that nobody will understand. I don't think any of the things that I talked about today make the game any bit more difficult by having them in the game for if a casual player wanted to play through. I think they can go through and play just fine and have a great experience without having to optimize and strategize to that crazy level of how many times am I going to town, right? They don't care. I care, but they don't have to care. And that's great. So this isn't some insane crafting system that they're going to have to spend 30 hours on a wiki learning or anything. This is just easy wins, easy ways to add tons of depth to a game without having to overcomplicate it. So that's my talk on resource management. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I'll catch you later, YouTube. Peace.